first and foremost, welcome to the show and thank you for joining me.
No, I'm humbled to be here, hermano. You could have just introduced me like, hey, here's this retired Army guy that's doing a couple things. We could have gone from there, man. That was a lot. I think I've read my entire bio, man.
I know. As I was reading it, I was like, man, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Um, no, it's we'll get into all that. I should have just introduced you as, hey, I'm with this out of shape old army guy. I'm joking, man. You're not out of shape, man. You were ripped. You were jacked.
Man.
Yeah. Um, man, what'd you think of that quote, the Frederick Douglass quote?
You know that it was crazy. Is like that quote. I think will probably sum up my childhood.
Yeah.
In regards, like I never heard that quote, but I was always raised. I don't come from a lot. Grew up in southern New Mexico, down there on the border, in a town called Las Cruces, and I'm gonna say we had a hard life. We didn't have an easy life,
Hmm.
but it's we were always taught. My father was a phenomenal leader, leading when I didn't know I was being led. Providing that purpose, direction, motivation, and there's so many lessons my father taught me as a kid that I didn't understand. I may not have liked, but those panned out later on. Then I just looked back at, with great admiration, respect, and love, even more so for my father. So that quote is incredibly powerful, and I do the best I can. I'm a father as well. I got my three sons, my monsters, I call them. I got two grandsons. So, I look at that as probably the most important role or job or duty I have today is that it's even on my LinkedIn profile. If you look at it, you're not going to see my job, right? Until I talk about, what I hold most important, which is, trying to be a good role model for my sons and grandsons.
That's thank you for opening up with that. That's incredible. And I wasn't planning to even ask this question, but since you just went straight to, you talked about your dad and you have your three sons, and I've seen all the pictures, I've seen the boxing and stuff like that, and the working out, and the two grandsons. What is the lesson that, what's maybe one lesson you learned from your dad that you didn't even think about as a kid or realize, but then now you're trying to teach that to your monsters?
Yeah. So, I just recently started sharing about this, in I don't think I've done it on a podcast. It'll be the first time I talk about it. But when I joined the Army, my father was my hero. He's a Vietnam veteran, served during the Tet Offensive. My grandfather served during World War II. All my great uncles, they served during World War II as well. I mean, all over every theater you can imagine. So those were my heroes growing up. I didn't really have comic books, couldn't afford comic books, and so it was just those were my heroes growing up. I knew who Spider-Man was. I
Yeah.
watched Joe when I could and all that, right? But um, I always knew as far back as I could remember, I wanted to join the Army. My father was very vocal, like, no, Mijo, I don't want you to do that. His experience in Vietnam wasn't the greatest, and I wasn't there. I don't fault him for that. He was there during a very tough time and lost a lot of friends. So I remember when I asked him, I said, I graduated a little bit early, so I was 17 years old, and I asked my dad, I want to join the Army. He said, Mijo, I really wish you didn't. I said, no, Dad, this is something I feel strongly about. I got to do this. So he thought about it, but then this is what he told me. He says, Mijo, there's things that you're going to be asked to do that people aren't think you're going to be able to do. There's things that you're going to see or be a part of that can be with you the rest of your life. I just want you to know what you're walking into. Whatever anybody asks of you, just do more.
Mhm.
And then he said it again. He goes, just do more. And I didn't know what the heck that meant. I'm 17 years old, very respectful, right? So I said, okay, you know, um, but that doing more didn't really like a light bulb click in my, go off in my head until, some years later when I decided to go to selection, become a Green Beret. And I was out on an event one day and, it's not easy, right? Easy wasn't for me. Um, and I was just, you're thinking like you're contemplating life and you're just trying to just keep moving. We were doing a long distance movement in an individual event. We don't know how long it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, how fast do I go? How much do I do? Like, what is it? Then I heard my father's voice, he says, Miko, just do more. And then I realized in that moment, growing up, my father never said, hey, do your best. He never said that. He said, just do more. Just do more. I do something, you do more. And I was like, damn, how much more can I do? Just do more. But then it was in that moment when I was in selection, I realized, hey, just doing more will continue. I mean, you'll do things you never thought possible. So when people do their best, how do you know that's your best? It's actually a self-limiting thing that we imply because no one knows our own personal best So when I say, hey, I did my best, you kind of like set your own goal line, right? But if you just do more, just do more, just do more, take one more step, one more day, work one more hour, whatever that is, move one more brick, right? Then chances are whatever your goals are, you're going to succeed in. So that was something that I didn't know what the heck that meant. I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
I just felt like, I just wanted my father to be proud of me for joining. But then it was later on, I was like, just do more. So that is something that, my father has instilled in me. And even with my sons, they're all, whatever it is they do, whether athletics or where they pursue. My oldest son's in the Army right now. That's the same thing I've told them. Hey, Mikos, just do more, right? Just do more.
That is so powerful. Travis Wookie Wilson from the Green Brave Foundation was on my podcast a couple months ago, and he talked about something, because I asked him, like, what do you do to push yourself? But he said, and I forgot who told him this, but just 100 more meters, right? Just go 100 more meters. And then, yeah, I love that you talked about your grandfathers and your dad fighting. You said your grandfathers fought in World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then your dad in Vietnam. So I imagine that you heard lots of stories about their times growing up.
I didn't really hear. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
what
I was going to say is, you know, like what stories when your grandsons are your age, or even like your sons are your age, what are some of the stories that you would, from your time in the military, that you would love for them to tell or hope that they tell?
Well, I will say that the stories that stuck with me most that I heard from my fathers and grandfathers and uncles and all of them that fought during World War II Vietnam was I was all what I say, what was it like? Like what was it like over? And I would ask them whichever theater they were in, and they never spoke about the war. For anybody that's been to war and done some of the things many of us have done, and shared, that's not something I glamorize. I'm not going to sit here and tell. It's one thing people want to talk to me. They want to hear sniper stories. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you sniper stories. Like, what's that going to succeed? Like, I'm not trying to sell a book or anything. I'm just not. I don't see the value in it right now. So the stories they would share with me was they would speak about the men that they served with, those to the left and right, right. And when they would speak about them, they would be, hey, well, let me tell you a story about Refugio, or let me tell you a story about, we called him Crazy Joe. Let me tell you a story about, all these stories, but they would tell these stories about these men. And like, the men in my family aren't big on showing emotion. Chicano men, just like old school, they just, the stone, right? The stone face. But as a kid, I picked up on the emotional aspect of these stories. So they would speak about these men with reverence and love. And it touched me. I'm like, holy crap. Like they don't talk about like that. They don't talk like that about anybody, except familia, right? Like, so I was like, as a kid, it really touched me. I was like, oh man, like who are these tios, these uncles, right? That they serve with that I've never got to know, but I still carry their stories. So I only say that because my sons obviously grew up in a household where my father was not a career. He served his time and went to Vietnam. Did his 5 years, and then he got out. So I didn't grow up in a military environment, but my sons did. I served for 21 years. Their mother served for 21 years, and she deployed 6 times. Right now, my oldest son just went over 8 years in the Army and has got a few deployments below his belt already. So, it's their environment. So the stories that they have heard or they have actually seen are a little bit different because they've got their finger on the pulse. Obviously, watching mom and dad go back and forth and seeing, me dealing with the stuff that I dealt with and the stuff that Kelly deals with. So whenever we do talk, it's big, long-winded story or answer your question. I'm sorry, but it just add a little bit of context. Like when we do talk about it, we just tell stories about our friends, and that's pretty much it. And it's the people, right? If you think about any of us that have worn the uniform and raised our right hands and said the same words we've all said, it comes down to it when you're out there. I didn't write the policy that sent me there, right? I'm fighting. I will do whatever is necessary to be sure that those to my left and right come home, that they're safe, whatever it is. And it's about the people, So we still do that, right? Even my youngest son, Jacob, he graduated high school earlier this year, and or sorry, last year, and he's talking about he's going to enlist, and he wants to go on and do same things. Thankfully, he might be the first officer in our family. We're all enlisted, so
Nice.
that'd be nice. You can be a little bit on easy street, no shade to my officer folks that are listening, but to the different life. Be honest, right? Let's be a little honest here.
Yeah.
But it's just we talk about the people, right? The familia, like,
Yeah.
and we've always done it for love. So
Man, I'm already loving this conversation just from the minute we started speaking. And even the way you addressed me in email, like Hermano, right? And you have that in your bio, like your dad, your brother, a friend, and it hits home to me. So I'm retiring this year after 23 years. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and I joined because of 9/11. And I'm from Oklahoma. I'm from Fort Sill, actually. Yeah, I come from an Army family, but there were so many people that were trying to join at that time. I didn't leave, and I'm Air Force, but I didn't leave for basic training until over a year later because there was that much of a backlog. But the reason I stayed in for so long, because now people are asking me like, "Hey, what kept you in?" And it's or like, "What are you gonna miss most about the military once you retire?" It's the people, it's the stories, it's the family, and it's just like you cannot replace that.
no,
But
no, you're right. So thank you for your service. 23 years. You sure as heck don't look like you've served for 23
thank
years,
you.
man. Man,
Stop, Rod. Go
uh,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah,
Like,
I'm not I'm being serious.
I'm joking. So this is crazy. So, and I'm 43 years old, and I know this is crazy. Like, and I don't smoke, and I do enjoy like a drink or two, right? But I have been drinking a gallon of water a day. I've been doing that since I was probably 25 years old, and I'm convinced that
Yeah.
that's part of it. And then everyone's got their own, home remedies or whatever. And I eat spinach probably every single day, just raw spinach with I'll throw it on with eggs or just whatever. I do that consistently, or I have been doing that, and people don't believe me, but then they'll see me. I have to pee every 30 minutes, like my life depends on it, or I'm constantly carrying around a jug of water, or I have five, big bottles of water that I always have around me. But I've been doing that since, I'm bad at math, but 2005, 2006, and but I appreciate the compliment. So,
Well,
um,
good. Well, maybe people will start drinking more water. I firmly believe like we don't drink enough water. I mean, it's just the things are like, hey, drink water, change your socks, and here's some foot powder and motion to cure anything, right? Well, I think the water of that four is probably one of the most important things that we can do.
yeah, I was even reading that LeBron James, I think, drinks 2 gallons of water a day.
Yeah, yeah, I saw
But
that. Yeah,
anyway, so did I ask you why life is great right now? Usually that's how I open up each podcast, but I'm not even, no, I didn't ask you that question because I went straight for that quote, but that's usually my opener question and I go from there, but why is life great right now?
life is great because I'm here. It's simple for me. Every day is a blessing. I have no idea. Tomorrow is a promise that may not be kept.
Mm.
I have now. I've in my experience and things that I've dealt with and things that I carry around. Right, I try not to live in the past. And if you live in the past, then you carry some things around with you, and they're always
Yeah.
there. But I every day I see as an opportunity to try to make the world a better place. I think we all have a moral obligation to do so, and that doesn't mean you got to cure cancer every day or something
Yeah.
of that magnitude, but just be kind, right? Maybe when you're at Walmart, thank the cashier by their name. Hey, thanks a lot, Laura. Or you just never know what people are going through or carrying. So that's how I approach every day. It's just an opportunity, and life is great for me because I'm still here. I've faced more mortality a few times. I'm like, oh, this is it. Oh wait, nope. Okay, I guess I'm still here. Um, and for me, I think a lot of us have similar experiences, but some are a little bit different. And mine were just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm still here. And then anger because I'm like, okay, what happened? And then dang it. And anyway, so I think life is great because I'm here, right? I just saw my son, and I'll get to see him here when we're done, and after he works out, and life is great, man.
Love it. You talked about anger but also like you have this positive outlook on life. How have you turned a current pain or even a past pain into something positive, passion, and purpose?
So when I ended up in Walter Reed, it'll provide context to this. So when my career ended, I'd been dealing with brain injuries and after brain injury, and then the wheels finally ended up coming off my wagon, and was doing a lot of things. So I got sent to Walter Reed, and they were, that's when they told me, like, hey, you can no longer, after they did all the assessments and everything at NICO, they're like, hey, you can no longer perform your duties as a special forces operator. We're initiating medical retirement proceedings. My world crumbled. And at that time in my life, I was still teaching or I had been teaching at the sniper course here at Bragg, at Range 37, and I was just doing the best I could to kind of keep things together. But they found a lot of stuff wrong, right? I had the beginning. They think I have CTE, which is called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I've already had some tremors and anyway, some stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. I can deal with that. But when they're going through the diagnoses, they got to, and you have severe post-traumatic stress and chemical dependency. I knew I was drinking like every day.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say I'm 10 years sober, but at that moment, it was, things were not bueno, right? So, but they said, look, before we address any of the medical issues, we have to send you to an inpatient treatment facility. So I got sent to a 4-week inpatient treatment facility. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm proud of that, right? I was put on a significant, medication that I needed at the time. Not ashamed of that either. So it was in this facility. I got sent for 4 weeks. They kept me 8. I needed the extra training, I guess. But while I was there was a doctor, and his name was Dr. Umar Latif. And I remember one day, he was my psychiatrist, and we were sitting there talking, and I was angry at the world. I was not a very kind person. And he asked me one day, I think I'd been there about 3 weeks at that point. He goes, Rod, are you suffering? And then I looked at it, and I'm like, man, for the first time in my life, I just missed Thanksgiving, and I just found out I was going to miss Christmas because I was here. I've missed plenty of holidays, but now I'm missing these holidays away from my familia, my kids, and everyone because I'm in a hospital, right? So I wasn't happy, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'm suffering." And then he looks at me and he goes, It's because you're choosing to suffer." I'm like, "What the hell do you mean I'm choosing to suffer?" He goes, "Look, suffering is a choice. Everybody deals with pain. Everyone carries pain." He said, "If you're suffering, it's because you're not addressing your pain. You're not fighting your pain. You haven't owned your pain. Everyone has something." He says, "Identify your pain, address your pain, fight your pain, and you'll cease to suffer." And then it was in that moment where I realized I had just been trying to ignore all the crap I was carrying around, all the shadows, whatever we want to call it, right? Emotional, moral injuries, whatever we want to call that stuff. That stuff I was carrying around, the regret that was leading to down some dark roads. And it's because I wasn't fighting. I wasn't fighting it. I've never stepped into a ring with a blindfold on. I've never gone outside the wire without figuring out where we were going. I never was in a firefight and just like close my eyes. So why the hell would I choose to do that when I'm facing challenges today? So I don't suffer anymore. So that's my answer.
Dude, I'm actually like I'm about to like the verge of tears, man. You were just you're a real one. And it takes a lot of I love just how authentic you are because you speak so passionately and nonchalant and you're a complete badass, right? And it's just but yes you are and you're very humble. Um but yeah, it just I don't know, man. It's inspiring, it's encouraging just of someone with your background and your skill set to have this fantastic positive mindset and openness because that's whether you realize it or not, you're helping other people. Um, yeah, not that you. I don't know if I just want to tell you that. I don't. I'm sure you know that, but um,
Well, I really believe that in order to truly communicate with someone, you have to be vulnerable, right? Vulnerability is the foundation of human connection. If I don't place myself in a vulnerable position and share with you openly, am I really communicating with you 100%? Am I holding back, right? And I think that's, you have to pick and choose when you choose, when you do that, because you can't just walk around being a target, right? Not everybody's a kind person. So, but if you choose to do so, it is a risk. Being vulnerable is a risk,
yeah,
quite honest with it. You know, sometimes my vulnerability, my innate vulnerability, will backfire, and things happen, and it's like, dang, well, Well, I didn't mean that for that to happen. But again, that's my choice. And if someone chooses to take advantage of my vulnerability in communication and use me in a different way, then that's on them. I forgive them. Okay, well, all right. I just know I can't be like that with that person. But so that's if there's a reason why you think I'm authentic or things, is because I choose to be vulnerable, right? I choose to just share. I'm not ashamed. No one's perfect. I've made a million mistakes. I'm going to make a million more.
Yeah.
But that's just, how I try to address every day if I'm blessed with another day.
All right on, man. I, I kind of want to tie this into your work with the Bush Institute, because your service as an advisory council or on the advisory council, it's just from reading it seems very impressive. What strategies or programs do you think are most effective in supporting veterans and their families?
Peer to peer, without question.
Mm,
Peer to peer. I'll say that all day long, right? Like, if just like you and I, we can connect and talk and share certain words,
yeah.
and they will identify with. Whereas, and nothing against professionals that may have, a tremendous depth of knowledge in a certain area that we need help with. Nothing against that, but peer to peer is I mean, if anybody thinks about it, like, if I can truly empathize with someone and consider that what they're dealing with or what they're struggling with or what they're facing, whether it's employment transition, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, fear, any of the things that veterans face, because veterans are humans too, right? Everyone
Yeah.
faces those too. But ours comes from a very unique our route is very unique. We pick those things up in a different way. um, so I think peer to peer, because if you think about it, like, even spouses talking to other spouses, at one point I was a spouse too, right? I stayed home with my three monsters while their mama deployed to war, and that was a freaking nightmare, right? That was, I joke about this, but I'm really serious about this. I would much rather go to war than stay home with my kids. I love my boys, don't get me wrong, but that is much more challenging to handle their schedules and all the stuff that happens when mama's gone, than it
Yeah.
is out there and live the simple life of being in combat. And it is a simple life, right? Things are very simplified and kind of black and white.
No,
Where,
100%. How old were your boys? Like probably like early teens, right?
oh my gosh, so Kelly's last deployment, man, I never do math out loud, right?
Oh yeah, I was just curious because I mean,
I think,
imagine whether
yeah,
like
I think,
they're like taking them to basketball practice and then
yeah, like her. I've deployed when they were all under 10, and then, or she deployed, excuse me, and then another one was when I had one adolescent, one teenager, and the other was still under 10.
yeah, not easy, right? And I'm sure with three
No, man,
boys,
they're active. Like, they're active. We want them active. Whew, man. And then, of course, the joke about, like, hey, the man leaves, everything breaks down the house. No, if somebody leaves, because then I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened here? And I gotta fix that. I gotta figure that. And then I'm not to mention, the unique aspects of dual military couples, right?
yeah.
I was in the Army. I was still in the Army. I had stuff I had to do, and uh, uh, I don't know how we did it. Like, really, Kelly and I have no idea. I mean, we're no longer together, but I'll say it all the time. Like, she's my best friend.
Yeah.
We never had time to build a relationship. Her and I are so focused with the boys. But she's my best friend. I talk to her probably about every day. And it's just we never built a relationship together. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. And
Yeah.
it's her and I joke. I have no idea how we figured that out. I really don't.
But that's great that you still have a great an amazing respect for her. I do want to transition to just meeting you at Mick and I remember watching you the first like early part of the ceremony, the festivities, and you gave this speech that was so captivating, and I was ready to run through a wall like many others in that audience that day. The passion, and even going back to what I spoke about earlier, your authenticity, your realness, your rawness. God, man, I mean, you had people on the edge of their seats just talking about the GWAT Foundation. And what I want to ask you, what did it mean to you to help create a memorial that honors those who served in the global war on terror. And then the follow up to that is, what comes to mind when I say the name Kengo Kuma?
Right. So, first of all, I'll say there wasn't anything I said on that stage when you were there that nobody else could have said either. Right. There was nothing unique about what I said. It's just, and maybe that's why it resonated because we all could have said that. Right. If I ever talk to people or have the opportunity to address, I'm not going to sit there and talk about me. I'm going to talk about how alike we are. I'm going to remind everybody in that audience, whether it's majority military or split 50-50 or majority civilian, that, hey, look, we're all similar. We're all the same. We all face unique things. So so I want to start there. I'm not that great of a speaker. I think I can say things that other people want to say, right? But as far as moving on to your question, what does it mean to work, man, on this incredibly sacred, like, take on this sacred mission, right? I don't have the words. I really don't. I just know that for me, I feel it's an undeserved honor to be in this role. I'm not one of the founders. I'm very open about that. Like, I didn't start this. It was a group of other veterans and family members that came together in 2015, and then I met them in 2016. And they're like, "Hey, we need help." I'm like, "What are you doing?" They showed me, and they told me about it. And it was at that point where my son was getting ready to enlist, and I'm like, "Man, what is?" I never really thought about it, so I jumped on the board in 2016. We passed our first bill in 2017, and then shortly after, I stepped in leadership position to take this good idea ferry. Like, oh my gosh, now we really do this. Like, how do you build a national war memorial in Washington?
Did you actually at any point Google that, like how to build a national memorial?
Yeah, it's I mean, no one grows up saying, I want to do that someday. It just this just worked out that way. So it's incredibly it's a blessing. I mean, I'm boring as hell. If I'm not spending time with my kids, this is what I do, right? Have an opportunity to share about the mission and why it's so important. That's it. That's all I do. And I love doing that because it gives me an opportunity to stay engaged with the familia, right? All those that have served and their families. And I wholeheartedly believe that this memorial is going to save lives. And if you give me a second, I'm going to tell you why.
Do it. Yeah, please go for it.
So when I started working on this project in 2016, and we had to ask for support and help and lobby and all that other stuff, right? To get a bill passed, because it's my involvement in passing a bill was watching. For those that might be old enough to remember that are listening or may watch this, is like, I'm just a bill, right? The freaking Schoolhouse Rock stuff that in the 80s, right? So anyway, the people that were surprisingly for me that were pushing back the hardest at all levels, even senior leadership. I'm not going to name anybody, but we're like, wow, we don't need that. Why would we do that? Maybe now's not the time. Was actually the veterans and their families, and I was shocked. I'm like, what? Why? What? And then so it struck me that they didn't feel they needed it, right? And then it caught me off guard. So we continued to work on it, and it wasn't until I stepped in leadership position, started really engaging with everybody. Then I realized, I'm like, oh, well, this is why, because nobody is better at diminishing their service or sacrifice than those that serve and sacrifice. And those in the military, you guys are absolute wizards at this crap. Like I just this. And I'll give you an example. So if someone were to have read that boring ass bio you read that started this podcast, if someone were to read that, let's say a veteran served, they've served in whatever capacity, whether they deployed or not, doesn't matter. If I get a chance to meet them, and if they read that before they met me, they're like, hey, Rod, I just did this, or I only served for this, or I only deployed this many times, right? So when they talk about what they did, they're automatically doing a compare contrast. And there's nothing I did that was, I don't look at anybody any different, right? I couldn't have done what I did if I didn't have everybody else to my left and my right. That's the real thing, right? I'm not one of those operators that's going to sit here and like pound on my chest and tell everyone how badass I am. No, I'm just trying to get through my day. So, veterans and their families, they don't think they've done anything because they lived a certain lifestyle that is hard to describe. People that don't live this life, they don't understand that. My three younger brothers, they can't be away from their kids for more than a couple of days, right? And they're like heartbroken. They're great dads, but I'm like, man, I had years. I missed years of my kids' lives, but it's normal. So uh, when I realized that, I'm like, well, then that's why they don't feel value. They don't feel the value because right now in the city that makes the decisions to send our sons and daughters, mothers and fathers off to serve, fight, and die, those that write the policy that sends those Americans out there to serve for whatever capacity in the global war on terrorism, there's no reminder. There's nothing there for us. We don't have a home. We have nowhere to go in this incredibly complex and difficult to define war called the global war on terrorism. And it's not, there weren't two wars, there were separate theaters. Nobody considers Operation Overlord, the main operation of the D-Day invasion, its own separate war. Then why is everybody all of a sudden assuming Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, New Dawn, Inherent Resolve, any other named operation that I can name for you that are fought under the auspices of the global war on terrorism as per the authorization to use military force that's been used since 2001, their own separate wars? They're not. The Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal has been awarded in South America, in the Pacific, in the Philippines, in Africa, and of course the Middle East. So where's that? So there's a tremendous amount of ignorance that surrounds this. Now, given that ignorance, and given the fact that, and there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. Ignorance is not stupidity. Those are two different things. I'm ignorant of a ton of things, a lot of stuff I don't know. But given the level of ignorance that surrounds this, and then when you start factoring in that those that are serving and fighting and giving everything is such a small percent of our population, well, no wonder they don't think it's nothing to them, because as we've created a warrior caste in our society. When people hear that 1% serve, I look at that as a point of pride. I'm like, man, that's awesome. That should be the goal of society. Not everyone should have to do what a lot of us have done. But as a society, we still need to come together and realize that everything is provided and protected for because of that 1%. But no one's doing that. No one's really talking about that. So given the fact that there's nothing there, and the most recent thing that I can talk about as far as like a stark reminder or an aha moment for everybody was, let's talk about the withdrawal from Afghanistan real quick. So we lost 13 service members at Abbey Gate, 11 Marines, one Navy corpsman, and one Army special operator, right? And this Army Staff Sergeant Naus, he was in Antonio's platoon when Antonio deployed, my oldest son, or he was in his unit, not his platoon. They deployed together. They earned their CIBs together. So I knew that I had met this kid once. So we lost 13. The whole world was watching the withdrawal, and then everyone saw that. So a memorial was held in Washington, D.C. Again, where all decisions are made, right? Where did they gather? The vast majority were Marines, so they went to the Iwo Jima Memorial. That's become like a focal point for my Devil Dog brothers and sisters. But think about that for a second. That is a World War II memorial. They had nowhere to go outside of, they weren't even not all of them ended up in Arlington. Think about that. We have nowhere to go. So when we get this done, when I get this done, when we get to that point and we dedicate this, I'm going to make the nation take the knee and realize and pay the correct honor and respect to those, because then we will make them realize that. What I tell veterans these days is the equation I figured out when people are like, we don't need that, is this is what I say. I say, all right, I want you to think about someone that didn't come home that you may know or you've heard of, or think about those that you did deploy with and may have come back a little bit different or struggling or dealing with some things they weren't dealing with before. Do they deserve it? And every single time I've asked someone that, they're like, of course they do. I said, okay, cool. I want you to think about them. I'll think about you. And when you reframe their thought, we reframe the thinking to like, okay, I'm thinking about those to my left and right, which is why we do what we do, then it makes sense, right? So when we do dedicate this on when everyone finds out that we're doing it, I hope they start feeling value for the work I've been doing for the past 9 years. And I really do hope that they start feeling the respect that they deserve. Because if someone feels value, you know what they're not going to do? They're not going to kill themselves. When someone feels recognized and needed and respected, they're not going to kill themselves. So I wholeheartedly believe that once we get this done and we continue these conversations, that we will save lives, because more lives more lives are saved off the battlefield today, right? And that's a metric we can't quantify, right? We can't measure that, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So when I look at this mission, I'm incredibly focused on doing that as soon as possible, which is another reason why no one knows I'm doing it. I could have used the limited resources we have to tell everybody, hey, look what I'm doing, and not succeed, or I can use the resources for mission accomplishment. And that's been the sole focus. But now hopefully we can get to a point where people start hearing about it. Now, the last part of your question, I'm sorry, I've been talking a long time. The designer. So when we found our designer, we did a global search. We wanted to find someone with the ability, the credibility, and humility to step into this space and build an incredibly complex, probably build something in the most difficult place to build anything, but with a humble approach, and understand that it's got nothing to do with them. That we ended up finding someone we probably couldn't have hired if I went after the hombre, a gentleman by the name of Kengo Kuma. He's a world renowned architect, not just an architect. He's an artist. He's a designer. He does a lot of things. When we were going through our search and speaking with world class designers from across the world, not just the U.S. but across the world, there was something that when we asked him, well, why do you want to do it? Why, because I'm always told, Rod, it should be a veteran that designs it. It should be a gold star that designs it. Well, here's something I can, and people can say, hey, Rod, why don't you design it? You're an artist. I'm like, well, let me tell you, even though with the extensive, experience my family has with global war and terrorism, I can name 55 friends of mine that aren't here anymore. Being home as a warfighter, as a spouse of a warfighter, and as a father of a warfighter now, my view would be very narrow. No matter how open I am, I couldn't do it. I'm going to be honest, I couldn't do it. So why should it be that one person? It'd be too, I don't say tainted, but it'd be too influenced by that individual's experience. So we found him to step in, and when we asked him, like, hey, why do you want to be involved? This is what he shared. He goes, Rod, I have a very close friend of mine that was killed on September 11th, 2001 in one of the towers in New York City. Since then, I've watched his children grow up without their father. But I also watched the United States lead the world in fighting against this evil, against this terrorism. And that allows me to do what it is that I do every single day. This guy's got offices in, like, I think 4 different continents, right? I mean, he employs himself 350 architects. He's a world-renowned guy, but tremendously humble. He's a 70-year-old Japanese man. He's like, I call him the samurai of architects. He's just very humble, very, very, very chill hombre. And I asked him once, when we got to the short list, I brought in experts to help me find these people. I don't know designers, right? I don't. I can find you the best snipers around, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the world's best designers. So we brought in experts that could do this. When they gave me the list of individuals to send an invitation to, I did. And when he replied, everybody was like, how did you get him to reply? I go, what do you mean? Like, what did you write him? I wrote him the same thing I wrote everybody else. No, nobody special. Like, they all got the same letter. So I asked him, I said, when you got my letter, what did you think? What was your first thought? And he looked at me, and, Japanese men don't get emotional either, but he got a little emotional, and he goes, he said, Rod, when I got your letter, I felt like Sugiyama-san had sent it to me. And Sugiyama was his friend that was killed. So this gentleman is 100% behind it, and definitely the right person to design this project.
Man, I'm getting chills.
Yes, I'm sorry, man.
No,
I don't mean
man, don't apologize. That was, I wouldn't change anything about what you just responded with. I think that was above and beyond. I mean, there's so many things. I didn't even consider the fact about there's not a foundation. And I've been to DC, probably 20 times in my life, and I was stationed in Hawaii. There's memorials all around there, for Pearl Harbor. But you're right, there's not anything for GWOT. And it seems like our generation, or people associated with, with this time frame, I don't know the stats compared to suicide I know we weren't, there's certain things we can't track, right, or certain metrics, but I don't know what the exact numbers are of suicides for men and women associated with the global war on terror versus Vietnam, the Gulf War in 91, and World War II, and even the Korean War. And maybe this foundation, or maybe the memorial, is not going to reduce that, but maybe it will reduce it. I mean, it's not going to eliminate it all, but it will help reduce that, because you're right. I think people, they're looking for, like you said, a sense of purpose and belonging. this actually, I just thought of this question. You know, we all heard the phrase that a picture's worth, yeah, a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's a phrase, right? Um, how important is, you know, in a picture tells stories. How important are memorials to storytelling?
I would say they're tremendously important because they're a start point. And I'm going to tell you a story, right? And tell you why. So my father served during Vietnam, during the Tet Offensive. We talked about that.
Yeah.
My father and grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I was raised, and you know, the two families in one household, right? So my abuelita and her family, and then her brother and his family all lived together. 24 kids, one house, right? We were, you know, they were, um, and my father's the oldest male, and Andres was the oldest male in the Moreno family. So they grew up best friends, rivals, right? But cousins, your primos, right? Um, my dad joins the army and deploys. And then Andres joins the army shortly after. My father goes to war. He comes back home. Andres was a little bit after him, just shortly after, but he joined the army. And then right before his, um, you know, you know, that was that. And Andres is on the wall today, right? So he deployed to Vietnam and didn't come home. So when I had always growing up, I had always been told that the Morenos, you know, my grandmother's, her brother, you know, family, had introduced my mother and father, right, and my mom and dad. I just heard that. I knew Morenos, my primos, my cousins are still down there, but I never knew the story. So this was about a year and a half ago. I was at home with my dad visiting him. I said, Dad, we were looking at the Vietnam Memorial, and he was looking at the wall of names, right? So they have faces, and he was calling names. I said, "Yeah, Dad, look, you can see him." And he was mentioning some of the stories of that I had heard of gentlemen, and I was showing him the images. And then Andres, he asked about Andres, and I said, "Yeah, Andres's picture is right here." So I showed him, and I go, "Dad, what's the story? How did you mom meet? The Morenos introduced you. Tell me how." He says, "Okay." So then, um, so we'll go back in time. When my father had come home from Vietnam, he was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was an artilleryman.
That my
Um,
hometown. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was a 13 Bravo. Um, Andres was deployed. So my father got a call to, hey, Andres is the body's coming back. Can you meet it? We want you to be the escort officer. Can you meet at Fort Bliss in Texas, in El Paso, right? So my father's like, absolutely. So my father gets in his, you know, hoopty and drives south to El Paso, receives Andres, stays with the body, goes right over to Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's like 40 miles away. Stays with the body all night because the funeral's the next day. Um, Before Andres deployed, he had got engaged to a young girl named Yolanda Salas. My father had never met her because, you know, people were writing letters then. He knew about her, but never met her. He had got engaged before he deployed. Obviously, he didn't come home, so Yolanda was going to be there. So Yolanda was there with her family. So my dad didn't meet her. He was going to meet her that day. He known about her. So then, so of course, Yolanda, I think she was like 20, 21, young. She brought her best friend with her. And so they go to the funeral. So Yolanda's there with her, you know, with her mom and her dad to support, you know, who they met Andres, and then she's there with her best friend Patty, and that's my mom.
Wow. Wow.
That's how they met. Yeah. So if you think about it, you know, I was shocked, right? Like I had never heard that, and I'm like, what? Wait, and he was like, yeah, that's where I met your mom. You know, at Andres's funeral. So if Andres had never,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here, right? I would not be here. And I just heard this story. I was like, what? So if you want to talk about the importance of storytelling, there's a story I've never heard. You know, every time, so when you know, I never met Andres, right? I was born in '74. So I would always go and get the pencil, you know, thing of Andres. But when I found that out, it's something different now.
Mm.
Very different. I owe my life to him.
Yeah, I mean, and now we're talking like what three additional generations of your family, right? Because
Right.
you, your son, and your grandsons, and that's my point with monuments or memorials, that you shared your story. There could be 1,000 other people who have an equally sentimental and hard hitting story, but it's a different story. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
this is um man, this thing has to happen. So whatever I can do to help support you, and please let me know, man. I'm Team
Uh,
Rod. I'm Team GWAT Memorial. Man, hey, thanks so much for opening up. And that is an absolutely incredible storyteller. You're an incredible storyteller. I think,
like I
yeah,
said, man, I just want to like share the truth, right? As long as you
yeah.
tell the truth, and I think it's important, really, because that's just one story from a that the memorial is dedicated in November of 1982, right? Now I know, and I was like, I don't, it was like I couldn't be mad at my father, but that shows how even the veteran community, doesn't matter their age, they don't
Hmm.
really think what they've done or how they've done is really that big of a deal. And I'm like, gosh damn, dad, that's like are you kidding me? That's like a lifetime movie. That's like holy shit.
That
Like
is a lifetime movie.
and I'm like, you guys ever heard the story? They're like, what? No one, they had never talked about it. And I'm like, that's
Wow.
so impactful. That is so special. Um, and so I wouldn't be here. I would not be. I mean, who knew, right? Like, it's just so that's just one story of millions. The Vietnam War started, ended, and their memorial was built and dedicated in a shorter time than we've been at war right now.
Hmm.
You think about it like that. It's like, man, we got to get this done as soon as possible. Because the love I have for all those that have given in this incredibly complex and difficult to find war pales in comparison to the love we have. And I just need to remind everybody of that and build everybody a home. Give them an opportunity to go home, right? To go to this space and tell these stories and share and come together and really take our tenets, which are honor, heal, empower, and unite, and really just do that together. I'm building the round table that we can all come and sit at and talk and share and have these incredibly complex and difficult discussions, but be honest and truthful and open. Because I focus on people, not policy or politics.
I have like 9 different. I don't know. I've been just taking mental notes of all the different ways I want to title this episode. And there's so many incredible moments. Hey, this is totally random. Did you ever watch the show Quantum Leap at all? Are you familiar with that show?
Yes, where the guy would like go into different lives and then like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I remember that. That was an older show.
Yeah, like in the early, like 88, 89, stopped around
Yeah.
92, 93. And I used to love that show. I used to watch it with my stepdad all the time. And I was always fascinated I've always been fascinated about time travel. So, and that was cool about that show because they would tie in, the show ran for 5 seasons, but there'd be random things where but the character's time traveling, like, through like a 50-year time period. But he'd have these random things where he would bump into someone on the street and it'd be a young Elvis Presley or whoever, right? But let's just say in the event that you were the real life Quantum Leap and you could time travel and go back to that a time when you were a little kid in Las Cruces. And what if that you as a quantum leaper told your younger self and your dad, hey, this kid right here, he's gonna build this an amazing memorial or lead the way for it. What would you say? What would your younger version say to that?
I'd probably think he was crazy and some weirdo, right? Like I'm like, what? Like, okay, Dad, who's this guy? Like, what's he talking about, right? I wouldn't. Yeah, I can't even. I mean, I think I said earlier, like, who thinks about doing something like this? And it's just, I don't know. I don't know how I got here. Like, I don't know. It's just, whatever reason the good Lord has sought to place this path in front of me, I'll take it day by day, right, and
Yeah,
do just as I can.
I have like one more serious question. We'll get into some lighter stuff, but I did want to ask you. So, how with staying on the memorial, how important how much is powered by feeling and emotion?
Uh, I think that's probably the primary aspect of it because whenever I even talk about it, whenever I say global war or just the word war, when you talk about that, everybody has an emotional response,
Yeah.
right? So I think this is led by emotion. What I hope, what I truly believe will occur is we want to be able to welcome that emotion, but also inform that emotion. Because more often than not, if we are feeling an emotion, okay, let's figure out why, right? And that's what I mean by informant. And with regard to the service, we're not. It's not policy or politics. It's the people, right? So then I think informing that, and again, I think that lends credence to what I was talking about earlier. Is just thanking them, right? Welcoming them home, right? It was that phrase right there, welcome home, was something that my youngest son said, right? We're talking about the memorial. He said, it's just it'd be like a welcome home, right, for you guys. And I'm like, holy crap, man, I guess, I remember coming home and I remember it's just different. But like as he says, welcome home for everyone, for all of you, for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And we're really focusing on the family service. We're focusing on the uniform service. Our most cherished stakeholders no never came home, but we're talking about everyone, right? So some of the 55 friends of mine that are no longer here, 10 lost the war at home, right? They'd still be here. I want to believe that. I do believe that. So we're recognizing everything. If you step into that battle space and do what it is that you did or we've done, it's gonna come home. And I don't regret anything. I don't want to come off like I'm like, oh, I'm a worse person today, or I'm like, no. It's an incredible blessing for me to have had the experiences I've had to get me to where I am today. I've learned a lot. I've experienced a lot, just like everybody else, but I don't regret it. I don't want to live with that anymore. So I don't. I think it's a blessing, but I think a lot of it's just emotion and for providing a space for us. Like I keep saying, coming home is where we can be vulnerable, where we can share without consequence of judgment or without consequence of someone saying something cross. And it's going to happen. I mean, we'll be honest with that. But again, that's why I focus on people, not politics or policy,
Yeah.
right? That's no. I want to talk about why I fought. I didn't write that policy. It was those to my left and right, right? The love that I have, but the love that I have, like I said, compares or pales in comparison to the love that we collectively have. But we
Love
just
it.
kind of don't want to talk about it as much, right? That's why I say love a lot, right?
No, I love it. Hey, I have some lighter questions if you have time for a few more questions as we start
Of course.
wrapping up. Yeah, cool, man. What historical, and these are no rhyme or reason, just some random kind of like lightning round questions. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Identify with?
Yeah.
Eesh. And I don't think anyone famous is as chaotic as me. That I would identify with. Man, I've never, I don't think I've ever compared myself to anybody. I look up to people, but man, I don't have a good answer for this one.
No, it's
Uh,
okay. Uh,
yeah, I don't think I've aspired to achieve certain things of people, but primarily it's just, not really do things like be a first for something, but more so in the way that they've approached things. And it's historical figure, maybe not historical where people would know, but it's my father. My father worked. I mean, I come from a family of laborers, right? We're not really educated to the point where someone was a scientist or something, right?
yeah.
Um, or an engineer or whatever. But I'm proud of how we grow up. But my father, no matter how hard he worked, 7 days a week, my entire childhood, um, he would always find the time, what little time we did have, and he never complained. He never. He just he was there when he could, and he gave me tools that I'm still using today, and I hope to pass on to my kids. So I aspire to be a lot like my dad.
Man, that's so good. That's awesome. Next question is for people specifically born in the 70s and 80s. Why do you think nostalgia has become so important to us, to that generation or generations?
I think, man, that's a great question. Um, and I think it's because children in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have as much crap, right? So when we had something, it was just, one of a couple of things that we had where we're such a consumer society, consumer based, consumer in everything it is, whether it's food or products or items or TV, right? What we had was very limited. So I think we cherish things a little bit
Mm.
more, and items mean something a little bit more to us because we didn't have a lot. And that's not just coming from a poor kid, right? I mean, generally speaking, we didn't. I mean, the only time we could watch cartoons was Saturday morning, So think about it. Like I couldn't come on and do the Cartoon Network stuff like my sons are able to do, right? Or have done, or my grandkids can do. I can throw on whatever I want. Like I can put anything on. And that's just me. I could be way off base, but that's just my dos centavos, man. My 2 cents and my thoughts on that. We just had a lot less, so we cherished what we had, and I think we lived with a little bit more grace and thanks.
You're spot on because I can remember watching Saturday morning cartoons, or there was just certain things that would come on TV, for example, and it was like you had to be there, and it was the family would work around their schedule for that. Whether it was Monday Night Football, there wasn't on demand, or you couldn't, just catch, watch the on demand or any of that stuff. Or for me, I used to have this box that I kept just random trinkets or random like my stuff in, and it was just man, yeah. Hey, thanks for the feedback on that question. I just felt compelled to ask you that.
No, man. I said, man, you can ask me anything. I may not have the best answer for you, but I'll come up. I'll give you what I thought.
Nah. Last two questions. If there was a giant billboard with your picture on it and message on it for the world to see, where would you want that billboard to be? And you can place it anywhere in the world. And then, second, what would you want your message to say?
Yeah, man. Where where uh where would it not get rocks thrown at? Um,
Las Cruces.
yeah, I don't know, maybe not. You know what I think? I mean, and no one knows who I am, and which would be cool, but I think, and only because I've grown to love this city, not because I've ever lived there, but I've worked there, I've done some training there, and I love that city. Would be New York City, right? Like
Mm.
in Times Square, and I would just what I would say was I would have it say I'd pass on the advice my father gave me. It was just do more.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's good. Actually, I just thought of a bonus question. Um, do you ever have kids come up and ask about your eye at all, like little kids?
Yep.
Or what's the funniest story that you've ever told the kid about your eye? Or do you ever you ever mess with them like I didn't eat my
It's
vegetables or something? Like,
uh, um, it's not just kids, and I like it when people ask me,
yeah.
because most people just stare. And what I usually tell the story is if I want to like joke around with something, and I was like, "Well, did you ever watch Tiger King?" And they're
Oh
like, "Yeah."
God, yeah, yeah.
Well, I volunteered at a big cat rescue once, and I got too close to one of the Doc Antlers cages in South Carolina, and he flashed me. They're like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "No, no, that's not what happened." So that's what I'll joke about, but
Yeah.
I'll use this opportunity to talk about why the prosthetic lens that I
Yeah,
wear
yeah.
doesn't match, and it has to do with a kid. So I didn't lose my eye. I was losing vision, but it's a special lens that covers my entire eye that helps me process, so I don't have diplopia, and it keeps me from losing vision. I'll end up probably losing vision in it, but it slowed the progress. So anyway, it's a think about it like a contact. It's just very different and unique to me. When I was seeing the a neural ophthalmologist for this, because the other thing I could do to fix that is just wear an eye patch, and I tried that for a year, and I got like a million pirate jokes, and I'm like, all right, this is. And if you work out and you're active, I don't know if anybody's ever sweat like on your eye. It's gross, like it's actually gross. So I was like, I got to figure something out. So anyway, this neural ophthalmologist, he goes, hey, we have this one. It's an occlusive lens. It'll cut down enough. Hey, we can make one that will work for what your deficit is and kind of help you out a little bit. Um, he said, and I have one that's pretty close. Actually, it's almost what I would make for you, but it's going to take me a while to make one. And we can get one to match your eye, but this one's like a blue. And I'm like, I don't care, doc. I'll wear a red rubber clown nose if you help me, man. I just don't care what people think. Yeah, I'm ugly anyway, so it's cool.
Nah.
And he's like, all right. So he gives me this one and it's blue. So then about a month later, I was flying through Reagan International Airport in DC. And I'm standing there, and some people are born like this. It's called heterochromia. Some people have two different color eyes. I turn around, there's a little girl about 7, 8 years old. Her eyes were identical to mine. And she's looking at me, and I lock eyes with her, and I'm like, holy crap. And she's like, Mommy, Mommy, that man has eyes like I do. And before her mom could say anything, I said, No, sweetheart, your eyes are far more beautiful than mine. I said, the good Lord made you that way. I said, I have to try to look as pretty as you. This isn't real. She goes, what happened? I said, well, I got blown up a bunch of times, and it's just to help me keep my eyes working a little bit better. So she got all shy and bashful, and then she got behind her mom. But then I had to go through my turn to go through the TSA thing, right? So then I go, and then you get to the part where you're putting your stuff on, and the mother comes over to me. And this is 2014. And she says, thank you for that. I go, for what? I go, that was awesome. You got a beautiful little girl. She goes, no, really, thank you for that. She goes, my daughter gets bullied relentlessly. I have never in my life heard her say anything positive about how beautiful she is till now. She said she's proud to have eyes like a soldier. And I was like, are you serious? I'm getting emotional now about it. And I was like, oh my God. So because of that interaction, I don't know her name. I didn't stay in touch with them. I didn't exchange information or anything like that. But I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'll never match my eyes. So that's why they don't match.
Thank you for sharing that like deep story. She remembers you though. You said you don't remember her name, but you've made a lifelong impact on her and her family. And I remember you for sure, and many others will as well because of the memorial for the GWAT memorial. I do have one funny thing, like just to kind of lighten the mood a little. You could also, if you ever want to get into acting, you would make an incredible Bond villain, or like I could totally see you as an assassin in a Jason Bourne movie.
Oh man, if you got time, I'll tell you a quick story.
Go for it, man. Go. I'm having a great time.
I hear that a lot. I feel like, man, you look like a GTA character. Oh, okay, cool.
At least I feel like the Bond villain. I feel like that's classy, right? Like, I mean, I feel like that's a little bit, yeah.
So I was speaking at an event at Student Veterans of America hold this big convention every year called NatCon, and it was held at a Disney resort one year. So I was there speaking at it, and afterwards it was at the Coronado, one of the resorts, like a Disney resort. And at Disney resorts they have characters, right?
Yeah.
The actors, I think that's what they call them. So they're all walking around. So I remember after I spoke, I went and they had like a convenience store, like at the hotel. Beautiful. So I'm buying like water or something. I can't remember what I was buying. I think it was a drink. I think it actually was water. And I'm watching, and there's this mother and her two kids, a daughter and son, are staring at me, talking, pointing at me, talking. And then I'm like, okay. So then I get in line, and the mother comes over to me with her two kids behind her. And they were like, I don't know, 8 and 10 or maybe 9 or 12 or something. And she goes, I'm sorry to interrupt you. He says, but me and my kids just can't figure it out. Which Disney villain are you? And I'm like, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm a guest at the hotel. And she's like, oh my God. And her daughter just put her head down, and her son was like, oh, Mom. So that's probably the funniest interaction I think I've had. So,
man,
yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I have one last question, and I just started asking this question to close out the podcast. The billboard used to be my finale question. But a friend of mine, Shane, sent me this question, and since I'm going to start asking at the end of every episode, but what one piece of wisdom would you pass on to the next generation of service members to help them light their own torch and carry it forward?
Oh. Well, first I would tell them that I love them for what they do. And if I had any advice for them, I would just remind them of their value and how incredible they are, and that serving others is a noble calling. And they're an incredibly special piece of our population. I think they're what makes our nation so great. They represent all those that may not have chosen to serve. But they're a very special population, and I would just tell them that remind them it's going to be hard, whatever they face, but they have a tremendous value, and I hope that they believe in themselves.
My man. Hey,
you could have said that too, Martin. You could have said that too.
You like you say you're not this like, oh, I'm just an average guy. I'm so boring. But the way you speak, it hits. It hits. And I know anyone else who's met you or seen you speak will echo those same thoughts. If people want to learn more about you or support anything that you're a part of, where would you like them to go?
It would warm my heart if everybody were to go to our social channels at the foundation. We're pretty easy to find. If just on X and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
The Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to get hold of me, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. You know,
I'll link all
so
that. Yeah, I'll make
yeah.
sure to link all that. Um, what can I do for you? How can I best serve you?
Dude, you're doing it right now, right? Like, it's just talking about the effort, the mission, right, and sharing it. And I would ask anybody that's listening is if they're first learning about it, hey, reach out to three of your friends and let them know that hey, they have value, and this nation is moving towards recognizing them. And I'm not gonna quit till we're done. I'll never quit. Someone else will come in after me, I'm sure, and do a much better job after we complete this. But that I would ask anybody else to please just learn more about it. And if they go to our website, they can sign up for updates. I'm not going to spam you. I only put on information was relevant. I hate getting stuff like, man, you told me this last week, right? The repetitive emails. I'm
Yeah.
not like that. We'll put out some stuff, but I'm excited to share that I'm going to be able to show you the initial concepts of the design that we've been working on here pretty soon. Probably spring, early summer. Everyone's going to see what it's going to look like.
Rod, hey, thank you so much for everything. And that's an understatement. I also specifically want to thank you just for, man, you were so kind to me at Mick and just, you were so chill. And, uh, man, there was a lot going on, but man, I definitely felt like when we had you made time to talk to me, and I definitely did not get the sense that it was like a checkbox, like it was just a genuine, like you were in it, like you were very present in the conversation and in the moment, and I will never ever forget how you made me feel just in that moment talking to you, and then watching you speak. Man, I have nothing but the utmost respect for you, and I just want to continue to serve you, man.
Well, I'm humbled by your words, hermano, but I genuinely lead with my heart. I try to be kind, and I meant it, and I think it's good to be kind. So I'm humbled. I'm excited. I'm proud of you. And you're getting ready to transition on. It'll be cool to see what's next for you. And please call on me if I can provide any assistance to you. I mean, like if there's something I can do to assist you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Man, I appreciate it.